Welcome to the At a Total Loss podcast, where lost moms candidly talk about stillbirth, baby loss, grief, survival, and all things in between. I'm Catherine. My first child, Brody, died at full term and was stillborn in January of 2022. I literally thought the sadness was going to kill me. And while trying to survive, I reached out to lost moms to connect with others who knew how I felt. It was these conversations that saved me, and to this day, they still do. We discuss our babies, life with grief. We even laugh, a lot actually. It is my hope that hearing our stories will help you realize that you are not alone in any of this, and maybe even serve as a guide to finding light in the dark. So get comfortable and grab some tissues as we discuss this crazy life after baby death that has left us all at a total loss.
Okay.
Oh, there you are.
There I am.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you today?
Honestly, haven't had the best day.
Yeah.
Not for any reason. You know how it is.
What time is it there?
So it's 6:30
Okay.
in the evening. What about you?
It's 1:30 here because I'm on East Coast time in the States. So you're just 5 hours ahead.
Okay.
So you've had almost a full day.
Yeah. I do have a glass of wine.
You do what?
I do have a glass of wine.
Excellent, as you should.
Yeah.
It's happy hour somewhere. It's there right now. Not yet here. Well, happy hour whenever you want it nowadays, right? The happy hour. We have like a group here that goes in Atlanta that goes to dinner and we call it happy hour, but we joke that it's really like not the happiest hour. I love how we laugh about this. It was just, but thank you so much for hopping on, girl.
Thanks for having me.
You've got a lot going on.
Have. Busy time.
Yeah, you started pretty much your tour, right? You've already started it, or is it starting in December?
So we leave on Tuesday, next Tuesday.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah,
So
I saw the drone footage. It looks so cool. You got that going.
Yeah, so that's in England, the drone footage at the moment.
Yeah.
And then we fly out to Auckland next Tuesday.
Oh, you're taking a deep breath. What's going on?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It just feels big, and I feel like it would be big had we not had the year that we've had. It's a big trip. It's the biggest adventure of that description we've ever done. So yeah.
So I want to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
You have two beautiful babies and they are not here with us. And this has pretty much sparked what you're trying to do with your pain. You're trying to put it into a purpose. And in order to generate the magnitude of what you're doing, I want, if you can and you're willing, to start from the beginning with Lenny and Bhai's story so that we can get kind of an idea of where you're at, Mama.
Yeah, so this time last year I was heavily pregnant with Lenny. I had a really, really straightforward pregnancy, as many of us did, really healthy, really had some terrible heartburn, and that's about it. I just happened to have two quite late scans with Lenny, just because I moved to a different hospital. So I moved to one that's easier to get to from our house and so on. So I had a scan at like 35 weeks, just because they hadn't really known me. And he had been breached, so they just wanted to check it was the right way round, and that was fine. And then I had another scan at 38 weeks, just because I had only had one scan at that hospital, so they wanted to have two. Everything was fine. I went into hospital on the 18th of December in the early hours of the morning, in labour, just 2 days after my due date. On arrival, everything was fine. I had the CTG on, because I had my waters had broken and they weren't fully clear. So
Yeah.
so
And
that
you had told me he
sorry,
was breech, right?
he had been
He
breached.
had
By the
been.
third, yeah, by the
Okay.
35 weeks he turned around.
Oh, wow.
And then in the 38 weeks it was like, yeah, he's fine. He's still the right way. That was kind of, I think that was the only scan I had where I was like, 38 weeks now, what can go wrong?
Yeah.
Um, got into hospital and they were like tracking his heart rate and everything was okay. Um, and I was lucky in inverted commas because I found I labored quite well, quite easily. Um, and then a few minutes before he was born, the atmosphere in the room changed
Mm.
and they called a doctor and the doctor delivered him by ventouse. Um, and when he came out, I was aware that there was a little bit of a worry by then because they'd said, we're not going to be able to delay cord clamping. And there were a couple more people in the room. But it was like, we're a bit worried about your baby.
Mhm.
Um, and he was born and they put him straight on the resuscitator. And I heard someone shout, cord, and then they put him on the resuscitator and they resuscitated him. And time just passed in a really strange way.
Mhm.
Because I remember my husband's face and he just looked horrified, absolutely horrified. And what I know now is my husband's worked in hospitals before. When he was a student, he worked in hospitals and he knows the arrest sound and he knew exactly what was going on and I didn't. And I thought a lot of babies need a little bit of help when they're born, like
Mhm.
they'll be okay. And then he couldn't be resuscitated and they told us he died. And what we know now is that his cord came up over his shoulder, round his abdomen,
Mm.
through his legs, and then round against his leg. And it was so tight that it actually left an indent on his leg.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and so because it wasn't around his neck, when his head came out, like nobody thought, nobody could see the cord. Um, and so it was the cord entanglement. So as he came out, like further down the cord and the birth canal, obviously that cord was getting tighter and tighter
Oh my God.
and cutting off his oxygen supply. And he couldn't be resuscitated because he'd swallowed meconium
Mhm.
in distress. And yeah, it's just everything went from the best day of our lives to the worst in seconds.
And you had said that you had scans, pretty good scans, right? Between you said like 36 and maybe 38 weeks later on in the pregnancy. And that is, it's still baffling to me that they're not looking for things like this, especially breech, because this is not the first time I've heard of cord accidents from breech babies. I've heard it several times that somewhere in the flipping around, something happens. And then when they descend, that's when it gets really tight. So what
Yeah,
happened at those appointments?
yeah. So we've had, so in England, they're trying to halve the stillbirth rate. And there's like this massive national investigation because they do big national investigations if a baby dies in labor. And
Okay.
they think that Lenny died like as he was being born.
Did they consider him a stillbirth?
Um, that he was classed as an intrapartum stillbirth, but
Okay.
for the investigation, he was classed as a neonatal death. I think
Wow.
he's kind of on the cusp.
Mm-hmm.
And the hospital were really open to him being classed as a neonatal death for the
They were
investigation.
or they weren't?
They were.
Oh, wow. That's very different than here.
Yeah. So,
They will mark anything stillbirth to not investigate.
okay. So
Mm.
our experience of the hospital, and I understand that we're quite unique in this,
Mm-hmm.
is that from the second he died, well, not from the second, I mean, like, they gave us a minute, but the next day it was super transparency. It was like, we are an open book.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to ask us? Like, they didn't want it, that, they told us things then, the day after Lenny died, that when the national investigation came out 6 months later, that was completely independent and looked through everything, I knew all of that because they told us everything. That what the reason why I mentioned the investigation, sorry, was they looked into the quality of those scans, and they said that they were excellent. I think the issue is, so I don't, I'm not frustrated by those particular scans. Like, I trust that they were quite thorough.
Mm-hmm.
What my frustration is that, why don't we have better scan technology?
Yeah.
So I've heard over and over again, like, we couldn't have seen the cord on the scan. Well, do you know what? In the last 10 years, the camera on my mobile phone has got, like, hasn't it's 100 times better, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be sat here 10 years ago doing this, would we?
Mm-mm.
So my frustration is, sorry, that's probably, my frustration is, that's why I've got headphones on. That the technology's there.
Yeah.
It's just not being used in maternity care.
That's the maddening part.
Yeah.
It's like one of the number one causes is cord accident. And then
Yeah.
also, we had talked about this before, small placenta, things like that,
Yeah.
which are things that can, with technology, I mean, we can see the moon. I don't understand. Like,
Yeah.
what? I don't know, understand that. And I feel like that's been the biggest frustration. And you, when we first started chatting, you said you're in research and, you were, oh, can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
I hit these damn earphones have like this little button. I don't even know what's happening. So if you were like saying that there's only been like a couple hundred actual papers written on these things, when you said something like rare forms of cancer have like 20,000 papers
Yeah.
written. So like
Yeah.
the simple fact that you went and you were like, let me get some info on this. And I think I posted about this earlier. I'm like, there's nothing like a lost mom and the knowledge that she has. You were like, holy shit, there's nothing as far as research about these kinds of things. Why?
Do you want to know? Money.
Yes.
Money.
There it
So
is.
there's about
This episode's gonna get taken down.
there's about 3,000 research papers globally on stillbirth. To put that into perspective, it's, if you took a really rare form of cancer or some sort of disease that no one has ever heard of, and if you were to contrast the, I don't want this to come out wrong, because I'm not saying that other things shouldn't be researched. What I'm saying is that we've made a lot of progress so that premature babies, for example, can survive. And a lot of that money has come from the fact that those babies are born and they're living and they're here, and it's like, let's invest more money to keep them alive, right? Makes sense. In a lot of cases, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding is, with Brody, and in a lot of full term or near term stillbirth cases, all that would be taken to save these babies' lives is they just need to be delivered earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So no one's making any money out of it, Catherine.
No, it's true. Yeah. And
So
this is not
which
this is not the first time. You're not the only one that has said this.
no.
And it's almost like part of me is like, what's the point? But we just can't stop. We cannot stop getting the research, getting the numbers, and sharing this information, because it's up to us to do it, which is such an incredible task to take on. You aren't even a year since Lenny died. I mean, neither am I. And here we are doing these things more so than, I mean, our doctors were basically like, okay, move along, on to the next. I mean, I'm so happy yours were as good as they were when they treated you. But so many of us, they're just like, oh, sorry, moving on, have another one, bye. And then it's kind of like, we're just stuck here trying to find all the answers. And all we're doing is running into things like money, like power, like things that we might not, like if we get too close, we have to be careful to the questions that we're asking. It's terrifying. And it's horrible, because I have so many of these conversations, and, you know, if they're dead, you know, then it's over. It's just over. Instead of saying, well, how can we learn from this? How can we give these parents answers? And how can we make sure this stops happening? That's the biggest thing. And you got hit twice.
Yeah. So exactly that. Like the reason why I brought up premature births is, you know, I'm 34 years ago, a 30-week-old baby, if they survived, that would be a huge thing. Now, a 30-week baby, like, generally would have a reasonable chance of surviving. That's what research can do. That's, you know, that is the power of, you know, we look at childhood leukemia, we look at all of these things. Yeah. So
there's just no advancements. There's advancements in all these other things. And this is crazy, because we're talking, you and I are in two different countries, and this is a global issue.
It's a global issue.
It's
a global issue.
Nobody wants to recognize this. It's happening all over the planet. And I have seen that some countries are making headway to eliminate or dropping. There's an article circulating on Instagram today. I think a lot of our shared mutual connections are sharing it. And if you get a chance, read it. I think Measure the Placenta posted it, but it's basically saying that other countries are making efforts, and you could see the numbers going down dramatically. Our country's not. The numbers aren't going down. As a matter of fact, if they're not staying the same, they're slightly escalated. And that's the thing. It's like, what do we have to do to start getting just the research for advancement on stopping these things? I mean, we're cycling. You're cycling around down the country. Taking matters into your own hands. I know. And I don't know. I've always enjoyed our conversations, the few that we've had through DMs, because you just are so researched, and it's not just you going off of broken heart or passionate to like make a ruckus. You researched, you know your facts. And that's so important when we have these conversations.
Yeah. So when Lenny died, you know, I do have to say, I think the hospital were incredibly transparent, incredibly honest. I don't really have a bad word to say about them.
That's awesome.
In all honesty, I think they did their best with what the tools they have. That's my frustration. I wish that, you know, why don't we have better scans that could see the cord? You know, people have said, what if you'd have had a C-section? It's just not helpful, because well, how could we have known? And they couldn't have known. And I was, you know, coming in, laboring well, and everything was looking good. You know, he could so easily be here if that cord had just moved by a centimeter. You know.
Gosh. What did you do? So right after, when it started to settle in, what happened? Because I know it's trauma. There's grief. It's you're having almost in a state of shock. And the doctors, I'm so happy your hospital was so accommodating and very transparent. What did you do with that initial information? Things like if it was just a centimeter, or if he had had a C-section, how did you respond to that sort of information right out of the gate?
I responded with my research head. I was honestly, Catherine, as soon as I was home, I was reading I was reading medical journal
Oh,
articles
I dig that so much
until
about you.
like 4 a.m., 5 a.m. Like that's just and but the more that I found out, the more furious I was
Yeah.
because I'd felt like we're the only people in the world who this has happened to. Um and then I read and I read and I read, and it was just like, this is my dog coming on screen.
Oh,
Um,
hello.
and just like how little we know
Yeah.
came across to me. How
That's
little we know, how
yes.
prevalent this is. I think each of our individual stories are so unique that, the uniqueness of, I've not read a story that's exactly like Lenny's, but baby loss in general is far too common,
That
far too common.
and I think that you're exactly right. One of the biggest things that hit me right in the face was after they told me, and you heard this on the podcast with Heather, that they were like, oh, this will never happen again, or this was so infrequent, it's like getting struck by lightning. When I started to ask around people, all I said to my friends and family were, introduce me to other people who have experienced this. And they were just coming up with all these people. And I was like, there's so many of us. And that was like so shocking. I'm like, how is there so many?
Yeah.
It's more than
So
we even imagined.
there's so many of us, and it's not matched by research efforts. And no one can ever say to you, I wish I could. No one can ever say it won't happen again. And
Ugh,
especially not me.
you cannot. Yes. Oh,
You know,
bless. You had
I'd
two tragic losses within a year.
within a year, yeah.
Oh,
And for entirely different reasons.
so you got pregnant just a few months after Lenny.
Yeah, like, so after Lenny, I was like, I could never have another baby. I'll never love another baby.
Mm-hmm.
No, 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 no. And then suddenly I just flipped and was like, we need another baby. And we were really clear that no one could ever replace him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about that, it's about fulfilling your need to have a living child. And that's a totally different thing. And again, like, I think in that pregnancy, I was more worried. And but I was so looked after. Like, I do have to say, I, you know, the hospital were really great.
Mm.
So my community midwife was actually the midwife who cared for Lenny after he died.
Oh,
She
wow.
came on shift to two shattered parents and a baby, and she was my community midwife with Bhai. And again, everything was going well. Like, we smashed the 12-week scan. The consultant was saying, you know, we'll third trimester, whatever you want, guys. Like, let's talk about it. Let's talk
Mm-hmm.
about what you might need. And she was saying, I'm really reassured because the best way to judge how pregnancy is going to go is based on your first.
Oh, God.
And you had a healthy full-term
You did.
pregnancy,
You did.
and you had an easy labor, and it was the cord accident. So she was saying, and the only intervention she said from the start was, look, I'll probably suggest induction at 38 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
just because it removes that risk of the meconium,
Mm-hmm.
because babies are less likely to release it around 38 weeks.
I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah.
Why is the standard 39 weeks here in the US? I don't
So
if that's a risk. I just okay,
yeah.
sorry, keep going. I didn't know that. I like as horrible as it is, I like hearing these new bits of
Mm.
information that are so helpful sometimes.
Um, and again, everything was going fine. And
Yeah.
then at 18 weeks, I started bleeding, and we lost Bhai due to a placental abruption. But it was awful because my waters broke, and my cervix opened, and I was bleeding, so we were losing him. But I had no water, but he had a heartbeat, and so we had to terminate for medical reasons because it was like an incomplete miscarriage. And the reason why I mention this is because I spoke to my friend who's a doctor, who's an obstetrician. She lives up in Scotland. And she was sort of speaking to me while I was in the hospital, but we also spoke to a number of doctors about it. And babies cannot survive with zero amniotic fluid.
Mm-mm.
So our choice was to wait for him to die, essentially, or to be induced.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, once we knew that information, we just didn't want to wait. We didn't know how long that it could take. And I was already on preventative antibiotics, and women can get severely ill. Women can develop sepsis.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew then that we were losing our baby, and I couldn't put my husband through it. I couldn't let him have to worry about losing me too.
Right. Absolutely.
Um,
That is a horrible position to be in, my friend.
mm,
I am so sorry that you had that situation, that you had to make that decision. I know that a lot of people are faced with decisions like this when it's the last thing that you want to do.
Yeah.
And I am, I think that having both of these separate circumstances and situations has put you in a position to be able to speak on behalf of a lot of different types of mothers who have had to be in these positions, which is very helpful for many, obviously heart-wrenching for yourself. But it's also expanded your knowledge on, you've done a good job educating others on what's happened to you. And maybe some of them aren't preventable, but what you can do is be that person for them when it does happen, to help them get through it. Because over here, the numbers are, I guess, maybe 1 out of 4 stillbirths is preventable, but they're saying it's closer to 50% once you get to a certain amount of weeks, like past like 38 weeks, 50% of them are preventable. But those that aren't preventable, it's like, well, here we are now. This is the bereavement. This is the grief. This is the dark that we're all in. And it's these conversations that make us feel like we're not alone. So anybody being in the situation that you were in, with that horrible decision that you had to make and losing 2 babies, you are such a person, you're a person that they can go to, because you have decided to turn your pain into purpose, which, who wants that burden? But you're doing such incredible things with your baby's names attached to it. And I think that's a light for a lot of people. And I know a lot of moms don't like being called a light, but what else do we have to look towards if we aren't trying to do that? It's too dark. It's too dark for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really, when you say, what did you do after Lenny died? And when I started redoing the research was, like I said, I do think everyone did everything they could for Lenny, but finding out how many stillbirths I think are preventable really got me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At what point, I guess Bhai was just in July, right?
End of July, 31st of July.
So you are still so fresh after your second loss.
Mm-hmm.
When did you, because we first started talking in September, and you were like starting your planning of the cycling.
Yeah.
Right? Is that when you first started it? So where did this idea come from? Were you drinking at the time?
You expecting me to make sense? Okay, I'll tell you. And after I've told you, you still might think It doesn't make any sense. So I cycled through both of my pregnancies. This could be a whole other podcast, but in my 20s, I was seriously ill. I used a wheelchair for like 5 years. I made an unexpected recovery. A lot of that was through research, because that's what research can do. So cycling became quite an important part of my life, became an important part of my recovery. And then, once you have the choice about how to move your body, it just becomes quite empowering and quite important. And I cycled throughout both of my pregnancies, and Lenny was such an active baby. Like, he'd be just, if I sat down, he'd just start kicking and whatever. When I was on a bike, he always seemed quite happy, like quite gentle movements and stuff. So I like to think that he loved cycling. And I still to this day can't beat my Strava times from when I was 30 weeks pregnant with Lenny. So he was a little powerhouse in there. We went away for our 10-year wedding anniversary about a month after Bhai died, and we were in Scotland, and it was beautiful, and it was summer, and we were miserable. And I just said to Roy, like, how are we going to survive Christmas? Because we've got Lenny's birthday, we've got Christmas, we've got another Christmas when we're supposed to be bringing home newborn baby, and we're not. Like, if we feel like this now, what's Christmas going to be like?
Right.
And I was just like, let's just do what we need to financially to get out of the country. Like, let's just, we just need to go somewhere in the southern hemisphere where it's going to be warm, and it's going to be just so different, so that we're not constantly comparing what we're going to do. So we came up with a plan of going to New Zealand, and then we looked at camper vans, and we couldn't even begin to afford them. So I said, let's fly the bikes out and cycle. It's not that big. And then it became, like you said earlier, this is a global issue. Yeah. And, I can't, the kind of research that I do is I do a lot of reviews. So I do a lot of what's the published evidence. Let's look at the quality of it and let's summarize it. That's what I do. I'm not in a white lab coat. I wasn't clear about that before. Yeah. But how you make it happen is you have to raise awareness, and you have to show that it's important. And like we've been saying earlier, there aren't any pharmaceutical companies. No one's going to make a lot of money out of this, essentially. As I see it, it's about how do you get the political will to invest in it? And it's about raising that awareness and raising the profile and saying, this isn't okay. It's not okay to say, oh, it's so rare. It's not that rare. And so we saw it as an opportunity to raise an issue globally. So we're making a film of it. So it's kind of escalated. It's a bit ridiculous because we cycle a lot, but we've never cycled in camp. We've never cycled this far. We've never been to New Zealand. We've never flown with the bikes. We've never made a film. Any of it, really.
Are y'all shooting it yourself? You're recording it yourself, or do you bring a videographer?
So we're shooting it ourselves. We've got a female-led adventure company on board, and they're going to help produce the film and edit it.
That's fun.
Yeah. So she's going to do some kind of questions with us afterwards.
Okay, good. So it's going to be very educational, I can tell, but also I mean, you have a great personality. It might even be a little entertaining. Who knows, right? I want to take a quick break to tell you about something I love: wine. I like to enjoy a glass or two here or there, but what I don't like is junk in my wine. So I drink Scout and Cellar clean crafted wine. These grapes are sourced from all over the world and have no toxic pesticides, no artificial processing aids, and no added sugar. They're also low in sulfites and absolutely delicious. Have them delivered right to your home and see for yourself. Go to www.scoutandcellar.com/Catherine Lazar to order your clean crafted wine now. I hope you enjoy. And of course, please, please drink responsibly. Back to the show. As much
Well,
as it can be.
She said if something goes wrong, you have to film it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, great. So I get a puncture and I'm walking up the hill with my bike. My husband's just going to film it.
Yeah.
Um,
Pretty much the whole thing.
But like, in a way, I think that's important. I think it's important to film as well, because, you know, my big thing is raising awareness to hopefully kind of build some momentum in terms of research and all of that stuff. But it's also about awareness in terms of, for those of us who are sadly already in this position, to just be a little bit more understood. And I would never want to speak for every bereaved mum. Of course, I can't do that. But it might reflect a little about what our days are like and how feelings change quite a lot. And, you know, even if people watch it and think, oh, people want to talk about their babies, who knew?
Gosh. Well, you said that there were I don't know the word you use. There were festivals or something that you could submit to. Did you say that?
Yeah. So we live in Sheffield and it's like the outdoor city, and they've got an adventure film festival. So we want to submit it to the Adventure Film Festival and also some independent film festivals, because I guess we want to get the normals to see this world. And it's not about it being a really kind of hard hitting thing, but it's, you know, this happens and it's hard. And if you don't know someone who's experienced it, you will.
Right. Isn't that the truth? Sadly.
Really sadly. And, you know, so many people, when Lenny died, it was like, didn't know that we wanted to hear his name and we wanted to speak about him. And that's why we're making the t-shirts with the babies' names. And, you know, I only reached out to people who I speak to, and everyone said, yeah, of course, great. And it would be really nice if people who haven't experienced the death of baby maybe learn a little bit about that.
How has everybody been? Like family, friends, since his death, and how have your relationships been?
I find it hard to put into words
how
much your baby dying affects every single relationship in your life, doesn't it? And since Bhai died, that's really been amplified. It feels like it's like, whoa, this is way too much now, you know.
Well, you said something that broke my heart into a million more pieces, that after Bhai died, it was more like the blame was even more intense, because how could somebody, you said, quote unquote, how could somebody lose two? And so they were looking at you like you did something, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Is that something you feel, or have people actually said, or are you just feeling like they feel this way? Do you know what I mean?
There've been some comments.
Oof.
There've been some comments.
I need names and addresses.
There've been comments, and again, like, there've been comments about like, you should have been on bed rest.
Oh,
It's
like, oh,
absolutely,
I see. Like, so you weren't doing enough, basically, is what they're
yeah,
insinuating. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah,
you were doing it wrong. Got it.
yeah. Um, and again, there's just such a massive ignorance around that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like, you know, um,
Yeah, that's what it is. And that's so the people who said things like that, did you ever
mhm.
notice them being like that with other situations before Lenny and Bhai? Because it takes a certain kind of person, I think, to kind of insinuate things like that. Like, would they have done that if they were alive?
I don't know. I don't know.
So I'm just kind of wondering if like death of babies brings out the jerk in people, or they've always been jerks and we just didn't know it. You know what I mean?
I really don't know. I really don't know. I guess, look, what I would say is that, what I would say to warm your heart a little bit is that, we've sort of said, like, so, I've told you about how this New Zealand trip kind of escalated.
Mm-hmm.
And then we realized like we've bitten off a lot here. Can we carry it off? And you speak to people and they're like, yeah, how can I help? People who we've never spoken to before. So I don't know whether part of it is people who are very close, who were very close, like struggle more,
Mm. You said
struggle
we're
with our
very close.
pain.
Have they taken a step back? Because I just had this conversation literally 2 hours ago with another lost mom friend. She was
Yeah,
saying that they're just changing. The relationships are just still continuously
changed.
changing.
Yeah, yeah. And like, I guess the way I'd say it is if you'd have given me a piece of paper when Lenny died and said, write down who's going to be there for you and who might not be,
Mm.
I wouldn't have got many right. Having said
Um,
that, people who I wouldn't have thought I was that close to are like, hi, I'm here. What can I do?
wow. That's
Um,
so true. That is true. I think within the first year is just kind of settling in and realizing that your life is significantly altered. Like you said, it affects the loss of the babies for affects everything. And then picking up the
mm,
pieces once you get through the first year, I think is what happens after that. So realizing that some relationships are just completely not ruined, but they're altered to a point where they just don't fit right now. They don't make sense right now. And
mm-hmm,
someone told me that I think it was I think it was Heather with Wellness and Grief. She was like, you have to table this relationship for now. And I
yeah, she
like
did.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that because and then someone said to me, make decisions that aren't detrimental to your relationships in the first year. Because I was livid. I was furious for so many reasons in the very beginning after Brody died. I was pissed that all my friends had living children, two,
Mm-hmm,
three, one's going to have four. And I couldn't even get one. So I was very mad and I was creating just this anger that, and some of them did not handle it well, with
mm-hmm.
communication and things like that. So my somebody who was wiser than me was very much like, just don't do anything detrimental. Don't say things. Don't burn bridges. Just check your
Yeah,
feelings.
yeah,
Like, and then revisit this when this season has passed because this is temporary. And when you hear that right after loss, you're like, no, it's not. This is forever. I'm going to feel this way. I'm going to feel like shit. I'm going to hate everybody forever. But, but then you wake up one morning, you're like, I'm not as mad as I was. So really good that I didn't tell people to F off,
yeah,
the some people you can't help but say things to, because if there's a level of like disrespect or continuously inappropriate comments, then you're like, hey,
yeah,
this isn't going to work,
yeah,
and that's okay. But I think that the severely altered relationships during this year may switch again. I don't
yeah,
know,
yeah,
but it's just the discomfort
absolutely.
of so many people too. They just don't know. It's too heavy for them.
Yes, and that's the bit that I think might get better in time.
Yeah.
So I don't accept that the death of our babies gets better in time. I just nah. but I do think some of the mess of grief, some of the
Yeah.
intense rawness, and you know, losing Bhai wasn't like 1 plus 1. It was like it just felt personal,
Oh
you
God.
know?
Oh yeah. Like universe, what are you doing to me? Yeah.
Yeah, like come on.
You have, but with that said, what's your anger level? Like how I know every day is probably different and every hour is probably different, every minute's probably different. But how do you keep yourself from getting to the point where you're just so unbelievably mad?
Okay, I think so. Like I said earlier, I spent 5 years in a wheelchair when I was in my 20s, and that was pretty anger inducing. But I kind of always thought, I don't know what other people are dealing with. And when I was in hospital, when Lenny died, Roy's my husband, he just hated everyone. Like he was just like, I'm jealous, I'm angry, like, yeah, like, and he hated seeing newborn babies. Like I did too, but he
Yeah.
really, really like he'd just see people and be like, oh, just hated them. And I just said, that could be us in a year. That could be us in 2 years.
Yeah.
You don't know what their journey's been to have a baby. And maybe that was that was a survival mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
I find
Mm-hmm.
that harder since Bai died. I feel like the anger is a bit
Mm-hmm.
more intense because two is just, and for like, there's no logic. Not that logic would make it better, but it just feels like, yeah, universe, what are you doing? Um, I lift weights. That helps.
Yes.
I feel like physically using your body allows anger to work out of your body quite well, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely a good outlet. Where has this his trying like wanting to have a living baby after the loss of one is
Hmm.
extremely challenging
Yeah.
to do again. Where does that leave you after two?
The the will's still there, but
Yeah.
the fear's
Yeah.
so intense. The fear's so intense, and 9 months feels like an incredibly, incredibly long time.
Yeah.
Um, I'm 35 in February, so that's another
Mm-hmm.
consideration. Um, yeah, I don't think, people say, you know, so like, physically, there's no medical reason why I couldn't get pregnant now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, oh, it's more psychologically when you're ready. And I just laughed when I was told that. It's just like, well, that will be in another 5 lifetimes.
Oh my God. Someone really said that it's psychologically when you're ready is when it
Yeah, yeah,
happens. Huh.
emotionally when you feel
Yeah.
ready. So like 5 lifetimes from now, I reckon. I just think that what I have to accept is that, I've done the highest bungee jump in the world. I've done the highest abseil in the world. I've done some scary mountain biking. And if I ever get pregnant again, it's going to be scarier than all of those things put together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We just have
Yeah.
so little control, Catherine. We have so,
Yeah. You're right. As much as we try, it's a false sense of control. And then at some point, you just kind of relinquish it and say, I don't have any.
mm,
You can do all the things right. And I think what happens to us is there's definitely phases after death. Like I was just like you. I did not want anything to do with another baby after Birdie died. That was my only baby. I wanted to love only him. And I wanted him to always just be my only child. I only wanted him.
mm,
But somewhere along the line, in trying for a second, uh, it was kind of like, okay, my heart is open again for a living one and a sibling, to expand our family. Somebody put it, you're not just having a baby, you're expanding your family. And I thought that was a really interesting way of putting it. And I think that it changes for us, and it gets to a point where the intense longing and wanting for a living child has to outweigh the fear, even if it's just an inch, because we're all deathly afraid. We're so afraid. It's I've heard that the second hardest thing after saying goodbye to your dead child or children is to carry again. And you already know, you've done it once. You did it for 18 weeks. And you know that now it's even going to be worse than that. That's a terrifying thing to walk into. Absolutely. I feel like the day that you're ready, though, it's going to be like, let's do this. But it's okay if it's on your timeline. It's all, it's mental.
Yeah. And I think, the thing is, a lot of people say like, oh, some people have actually said to me who've had earlier losses, I'll feel better when I get to this point. But for us who've had such late losses, it's like, I've got to be walking out of the hospital. If I'm honest, when I was pregnant with Bhai, I kind of thought second trimester is the one time when I can relax.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, get past the 12 weeks, then like second trimester I can relax a bit, and then third trimester I'll just freak out until the end. And then Bhai died in the second trimester, so there is officially no safe point.
No, there isn't. They say that too. They're like, congrats, you made it to 30 weeks. If they're born now, they could survive. And then you kind of chill after that, especially in your first pregnancy. You're like, okay, cool. That's just not accurate. And as a matter of fact, I think stillbirth rates go up with every week after 37, from what I've heard. So I want to know how we can support you and what you are about to embark on. What can we do?
Okay, so part of what the cycle is about is also, so we've just submitted an application to make Lenny's Legacy, the website, into a charity.
Okay.
And the idea about that is that we are supporting the support network to support bereaved parents, mums and dads. So free things for parents, free things for friends and family, but we're also going to be delivering training to healthcare professionals and so on. Because for that reason that you were saying about our hospital, it made such a difference that they were really open, transparent, honest, respectful. Doesn't bring Lenny back.
Yeah, but no, absolutely not. But that's so important for you and your mental and even your physical well-being and your recovery and how you deal with this. Do you know if they had like additional training for these kinds of things?
I know that they've got a brilliant bereavement midwife because we're in contact with her.
Yeah.
But they only have annual training. So my husband's got 10 years experience in teaching. I've got a background in social work and research. So we want to kind of use our skills together to do this research. So in terms of what you can do to help, I think we just want to get film viewed as much as possible globally.
Okay. Is it going to be, are you going to have a link for us to view it? Is it a YouTube link, or how are you going to get it to us?
We're not sure yet. So it's going to be...
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. We'll have daily updates pretty much, or as much as we can get Wi-Fi available. I think it would be helpful to hear from other parents what the really key things they'd like to get across are, because it's only going to be a short film and we can't do everybody's stories justice. But I feel like if we could just get across something about that grief isn't linear.
Yeah.
That people want to talk about their babies, and that this happens a hell of a lot more than we realize, and more needs to be done about it.
Yeah.
If we could get those 3 points across, I think that could be really powerful. I do think there are an awful lot of people who want things to change, including in the medical community. I think it just needs a real spotlight on it, and you know, it needs money and it needs investment. And like we were saying, there's just not in every case, and very sadly, maybe not in Lenny's case, until there is better scan technology. But I do think in a lot of cases this can be prevented, and that's what I think the starting point is getting it talked about. Because I don't know about you, but I was not aware that this happened.
No, I was not. And then to have more conversations and more connections on Instagram and more people to reach out to through doctors. And I mean, it's like, and then you learn something, because we all are in a certain category, but everybody's experience is so different.
Yeah.
Everybody's what happened is so different.
Yeah.
It's just, and it's wild. And the knowledge and the information we all have, it's so important to tell each other and tell people these conversations, because doctors don't sit and do the research that you've done. I mean, they've studied, obviously, and they're very brilliant. I won't deny that. But for you to take the time, hours and hours to research and connect the dots and get the facts and the numbers and put it all together, I guarantee you not many people do that. And that's a really powerful thing, that you have all that information. And it would be a shame if you kept it to yourself. You know, it would help nobody if you kept that to yourself. And I know it's a really hard thing to do, to sometimes share about our babies, but some of us do feel called to do it because it keeps their names alive, but it also takes care of their, you know, angel buddies' moms or angel buddies' parents, if you think about it that way. And also to shed light on this stuff, because we are kind of angry. We're angry at this. This should not have happened. And it has to stop. And it's not even that it has to stop. It's just, we want people to care. The people that matter to care about it. And it just feels like they don't. And I will link in the description of this anything that you want to give me that would help us stay along with your journey.
Sure.
I hope you're going to like keep updating us as soon as you start it. And so we know like where you are, how long you've been going. How long is it going to take you?
So we're doing it over 2 months, which we thought, oh, that's quite chilled. It's only like 50K a day. But I forgot that we've never carried all of our stuff. We've never camped the whole time. But what's really cool, I can't believe I've not told you this. What's really cool is we've had bereaved parents who live in New Zealand reach out to us and say, it would be great to meet you, which is part of it, you know?
So huge.
And you get that thing that I'm sure you've had, and I'm sure you have a lot, is that, oh my gosh, someone else has experienced this. That breaks my heart. But then the connection as well, it's a complex thing, isn't it?
It really is. It breaks your heart to meet them, but you just feel like the best version of yourself after you walk away from talking to them. It's just like the craziest. Like you just feed off of each other's just unbelievable love and resilience and strength. And that's so powerful. Record all of that. Like I want to see the meetings. Like, oh, it's so awesome. I love that stuff. And I mean, I have been wanting to get over to that. You're part of the world and would love to meet you if I ever can get over there. We're not far. Atlanta is like 6-hour flight. It's not bad. You're going to bike for 2 months. Like I can't complain.
Just, get in a boat, get paddling over.
Why don't I start? I'll record that one. Jeez, that would be so hilarious. All right, guys, I'm on my way.
What was great was we talked to this female adventure company, and I was thinking, she's gonna be like, what are these people doing? Like, what has cycling like down New Zealand got to do with baby loss? Like, obviously, absolutely nothing really. But she had her own experience of grief, very different. But she just got it.
Yeah.
And she just said, this is a really powerful way to tell this story. And, there's something that for me, there's something about we had, so, Lenny and Bhai's death have shown me what little control I have in
Mm-hmm.
this life. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting myself in a position of maximum uncertainty and trying to trust myself and Roy and the universe that we can just, we haven't planned our route. We
Oh, you
haven't,
haven't?
no,
Even
we've
better.
got we've got a rough idea, but that this is the whole thing is like we want this to be a proper adventure, maximum uncertainty, and things will go wrong. We'll film them. Um, and to just show that they're the things that we can fix.
Yeah. And this has got to be such a huge part of your journey about how you feel it's going to bring you closer to Lenny and Bhai. They're going to be there with you the entire time. I feel like you're going to just feel so much closer to them getting out and doing this. And it's so important for your own personal journey through this.
Yeah, yeah,
As selfless as you are and how many people your lives you're changing and the good that you're doing, you're still on your own journey. I mean, so am I. I think people are literally witnessing us figuring this shit out.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm proud of you. I think I can't wait to see and how it goes. And I'm so happy we finally connected to record this. We've been talking about it and finally we got to do it. But I hope that you can like do some live streams and things like that. And can't wait to see how this goes, and anything that I can do, I will do to help.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Gosh,
so
of
much. Yeah,
course.
if you could just share it and we can just,
Yeah, you got it.
yeah,
We could
yeah.
I'll come up with some stuff, some ideas. We could even do like a YouTube live or something and see if we can get everybody over there and we can talk about how it's going and just try to get some eyes on you. It could be like 3 a.m. for me, but it's fine. I don't care. Let's go. Because you're going to time change big time for you, no? Or are you kind of similar?
Oh, hugely.
Yeah.
It's like 12 hours. It confuses me so much. I was messaging a mom in New Zealand and she lost, so you and I are both 18th of the month
Oh, yeah.
babies, aren't we?
Yeah.
You're like a month after me. It breaks my heart every time I think of the amount of people who've been in that room, the bereavement room,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
since Lenny, like breaks my heart. Um, and this mum's a 19th of the month mum. But I didn't realize that. I was like, I didn't realize you were the 18th of the month. She was like, no, it's the 19th of the month. And it's like, how are you a day ahead? How
Oh
can it
my
be a different
gosh.
day? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That there's somebody literally experiencing that 24 hours after you did, and then 24 hours
Mhm.
after they did, and then 24 hours
Mhm.
after they did. I mean, like it's every day. It's every
Yeah.
day. I think in the States, it's 62 families a day, something like that,
Wow. What?
which doesn't seem
Well, I
like a
guess
lot,
it's
but it
so
is when you're one of them. Yeah.
it's a huge amount.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's 13 a day here.
Still too many. Should be.
Far too many.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what it is, it's for here. It's, I think if a 747 jet fell out of the sky every week for a month, that's the equivalent to how many stillbirths, and no one's doing anything. It's just so wild. Yeah. There's a lot going on over here. I just can't.
But I think that's why it's a global
So
issue,
much
isn't it?
shit, man. Yeah.
Because come on, like if it was 10-year-olds and it was like, yeah, it's 10-year-old disease.
Oh, then just 10-year-olds were just dropping when they hit 10 years old
Yeah,
and no one was doing anything. Oh, 10-year-olds just
yeah,
die. God.
yeah, it's just the way it is.
It's unbelievable. I think I said to you, it's like if your friend was murdered and no one did an investigation, or just kind of like, well, I don't understand how no one's looking into what happens and like learning from it. And that's the worst part. It's like the reaction is nothing. So it's like, well, then how are you going to prevent this from happening to my friend, or me again? Like that's the thing. And so you're doing so much to help with that.
I hope so. We're doing our tiny little bit. I think like any bereaved parent like yourself, we just look at what we can do and we try
Yeah,
and do that.
that's it. It's all we can do.
And it just goes to show what can be done because in the UK, they're trying to halve the stillbirth rate. And they're doing that by doing these national investigations that they're doing. So
we could take
so
a
if they
page out of
think
that
there's
book. That would
something,
help.
yeah. So if they think that something can be learned by looking through all the notes, speaking to everyone involved, verifying it with independent doctors to say, given this information, what would you do?
Yeah.
And if, you know, in the conclusion for Lenny was everyone did everything they could and we got good care. But that's often not the conclusion.
I am so thankful that you chose to share your babies with me and your heart and all the things that you're involved in. Your fire is radiating through my computer screen. So it's awesome. You're one of the good ones, my friend.
Thank you. So are you.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, we're sometimes wonder what it would be like if I did not have a calling to run my mouth all the time, but it might be more chill of an existence, you know, but you feel called to do things, you know?
Yeah. And I just, you know, you asked me before, you were like, were people jerks before their babies died? It sounds weird when I say jerks in an English accent. But I'm like, how come bereaved parents are the best people on the planet? Like, were we all so great before?
I know. That's a great question when you put that into perspective. I don't think I was. It took this. Thanks, Brody. You fixed me, man. And someone said, I asked this because I have a grief counselor here in Atlanta that I see every month, and she is also a lost mom. Her baby died after 24 hours, but so she gets it. And I kind of was like, who am I now? Like, what is this? Why do I feel so much more things now? I thought that after the death of Brody that I would just be like, oh, nothing is going to bother me. I'm going to be super chill. That's not accurate at all. Like, I am not chill. I am by no means chill. Like, I get affected by things in such good ways sometimes that it moves me. And she was like, well, motherhood does that. And I was like, huh. So is it just being a mother, or is it a mother to a dead child? And she was like, why can't it be both? And I was like, okay, interesting. But I think that going through and suffering such horrific trauma, it increases our love for our babies and the capacity of how much we can love. I just don't think a lot of people experience that in their lifetimes. And I think that's what makes this community so special.
Yeah.
The amount of love that we have, like the amount of love we have for our babies, but also the amount we're willing to give to others is kind of nuts.
Yes. And that was when I was pregnant with Bhai, I was like, can I love another baby as much as Lenny? And I just think we have an endless capacity for love. I don't think we can understand it. I think we just have an endless capacity for love. But I can't remember who I was messaging. I think it was Crystal, you know, Hope and Joy.
Yeah, I love Crystal.
I think she's great. We had a Skype, not a Skype, like a Zoom call. And at one point we were like, more love, less bullshit.
We were like,
that's a great tagline, isn't it? And I think that's how I have zero time for bullshit. But
I love that. And that's exactly where we are. You know, big talk, no small talk. Let's go in. Do you want to? I know I could talk to you forever, but I know you probably have things to do or another glass of wine to drink. Do you want to leave us with, or leave me with anything? Do you have anything you want to end the conversation with as far as your message? Or, I mean, you said so many wonderful things already.
I mean, so you can follow us. We'll be updating our Instagram as much as we can.
Perfect.
When we're away. Our website, Lenny's Legacy, is constantly evolving and being updated. And what I haven't mentioned is that Roy writes a blog on there as well. So there's quite a lot from a man's perspective.
Great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Good. It's nice to hear from the fathers.
Yeah, he also does things like carve Lenny's name with a chainsaw. You know, we all grieve differently.
Yeah, same. Yeah. Super aggressive. I love it. carving names with chainsaws. That's exactly how we operate now. That's so funny. Oh, I love that. Okay. So then when we hang up, then I will get those links from you and anything that
Thank
you
you so
want
much.
to put as far as your bio and make sure that I do it justice. So yeah, but thank you so much for doing this and so much luck to you guys. I think it's going to be amazing.
Thank you.
All the prayers,
Thanks.
all the good energies, calling on our boys to look after you.
Well, I think with all of those names on the back, I'll be like turboing up
Swarmed
the
by,
hill.
yeah, they're just going to be pushing you.
Yeah, well, it turns out New Zealand's, hilly.
Yeah. Oh, enjoy it too. Try to. I mean, this is probably means the first of probably a lot of things you'll do, but it's going to be so special. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Thank
right.
you so much. It's been lovely talking to you.
It's been lovely talking to you too. I hope we could do it again sometime.
Yeah.
All right, girl. Take care. I'm
Take
going to be
care.
watching. Okay, bye.
Bye.
That's all for this episode of the At a Total Loss podcast. If you'd like to help other lost moms benefit from our stories, please share, rate, and comment wherever you are listening. Thank you for being the strong mama that you are. And remember, when things have you at a total loss, we're here to help you find the light in the darkness. Take care, lost moms.